So yeah, let me introduce the next few guests. They're really, really incredible. A lot of Bitcoin open source developers like to be, I guess, on the low, but I'm happy that you guys are going to experience what it's like inside, I guess, the depth of Bitcoin development. So first person up is Okjodom. He's a contributor to Fedi. I'm sure you guys are aware of Fedi. They're working on joint custody. They're working on. And then we have Duncan, who's an open source developer focused on Lightning Network, as well as a teacher at Gala. So I'm really happy he's helping out. And then the last is Heritage. Heritage is CEO and founder of DigiOats, and he's a Bitcoin consultant for Dinar. So hey guys, how's it going? So yeah, we're getting in. I guess this panel is really to, I guess, demystify the Bitcoin development space for a lot of people. Not everyone knows exactly what's going on under the hood, so I want us to take this opportunity to really highlight and give a good overview of what exactly it entails in the space, how to do, what are the different ways to contribute, how everything is structured. So the first question I have for you guys is, can you just tell us a bit about the work you're doing and kind of the general, I guess, journey you've had into being a Bitcoin developer?
All right.
Go ahead.
Hello. So it's really, to start with, thanks. It's been a fantastic 3 days, and I've thoroughly enjoyed and learned a lot. I'm Okjodom, and I contribute to the Falodun protocol. My journey into that has been being a general software engineer for the past 4 years, particularly thinking in the space of collaboration. And I have started my learning more intense in Bitcoin in the past 1.5 years and come across some interesting philosophies, for example, and lessons, particularly that Bitcoin is a technology, and the next one is that Bitcoin is a technology for collaboration. So middle of this year, I was going through my learning, like scratching the surface, and then I came across the Falodun protocol. And so my next obvious step was to figure out a way of jumping on that, because it just aligned so much with my values from where I come from. I come from Kenya, and communities are a big, big thing about that. So we will dig more into that, but that's my journey into Falodun protocol and Bitcoin development.
Amazing.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Abubakar, for the question and for the introduction. I'd say also my experience getting into Bitcoin was maybe kind of non-standard as well. I have a background in physics and mathematics, and a little after that, I started doing my own thing, freelancing, startup, and I decided to try and expand back into Bitcoin. So I worked for 3 years at a cryptocurrency exchange called Luno that some of you might know about. But in my final year of working there, I was more interested in getting into open source Bitcoin development. So that's when I first started contributing to Bitcoin Core and LDK. Had a keen interest in LDK because I was from a Rust development background. And then at the beginning of this year or so, I came forward to be a teacher at Gala, and that's been a very rewarding experience. Yeah, and to see where some of the participants have come out of that program now and are actually doing open source Bitcoin development, working at Bitcoin companies, actually making a difference, within the continent as well, which is, I think, very important. Yeah, thank you.
Abubakar for the nice introduction. Actually, I have a technology background as a computer scientist by grade, and my getting myself acquainted with Bitcoin happens due to my curiosity into finance, and Talking about my technical background, I am more of a mobile dev who writes languages like that programming language using Flutter framework. But then, I mean, I was so keen about finance and everything I'm doing in terms of technology, I also resonate with finance. So I get myself acquainted with cryptocurrency, but I learned through the hard way. And learning through the hard way, I was sort of pulled, and I sat down and decided to intensify my effort into studying the concept of what is behind cryptocurrency. So I mean, I found Bitcoin through the help of Black Bitcoin billionaires, and since then I've been trying to get myself acquainted with Bitcoin, only checking out core repository, GitHubs, and trying to see what I can lay my hands upon, not just on writing codes alone. I mean, getting people acquainted with Bitcoin and not letting them go through the hard route the way I went through when I was getting myself acquainted with cryptocurrency. So that leads me up to my track with DG and being a consultant with Bitcoin focus firms like Dina. So I mean, that's more like a brief elucidation about my journey into Bitcoin.
Nice. So I guess it would be good for us to give the audience a quick brief about the open, well, not really open source, but the whole Bitcoin development ecosystem. So just map it out for them, let them know the differences between, protocol level, application level. So take it on for guys.
Yeah, from where I am right now, I see certain things. There is Bitcoin Core itself. And in this room, probably one of the best people to talk to about that is right here, Abubakar. So there is Bitcoin Core, there is Lightning, and now there is a third pillar for Bitcoin, that is Fedimint. There is a ton of user-facing applications on top of that. You can look at things like BTC Pay Server and a few other things. So maybe, I don't know if we need to go into each of these things. But there is, I would let Dean also mention some.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think also Lightning's been mentioned, and if we look at first of all, there's a protocol spec level and a few implementations that have come out of that. So the space for becoming a developer and getting into Lightning development, it's quite wide, and I think you don't just need to be a spec developer. Yeah. You can work on an implementation. And you'll see I'm usually wearing the Fedimint merch and stuff, and it's because I'm a big fan of the project. I don't work on the project, but I think it's due to the crack marketing team of Fedi. So, yeah, I think to understand more of the ecosystem, there's a lot of things being built on Bitcoin and Lightning itself. So if you just don't look at the protocol implementation specifically, there's a lot more out there, and I think it's just growing every day.
Yeah.
Yes, buttressing Duncan's point, I'm just going to add into it, saying getting yourself acquainted with Bitcoin technicalities itself doesn't end in writing the codes and the implementation only, though we know there are development processes on the on-chain and the second layer, but if you tend to get yourself acquainted with Bitcoin and really intensify efforts into contributing to it, I mean, it means contributing to humanity. The codes are fully open source, and it adds stages to it. So as a technical person, probably on the product level, on the UI level, and even the development point of things, Bitcoin is extremely inclusive for everyone to contribute. That's why it's known for its decentralized fixtures, and I mean, Bitcoin improvement proposals are open for contributions, and what we need to intensify on, it's more getting efforts to see more developers keyed into building into the core repository and making more changes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would like to just take 2 minutes and dig because each one of these things we've mentioned are quite rich. But for the 2 minutes, if I was to just give a brief overview of what Fediment is, we have the protocol itself, which is where I work. That is, and the protocol itself is composed of software to be run by Fediment Guardians, if you dig more into the concept. And then there is a part of this which is integrating with Lightning, another rich field to look into if you're a developer, if you're a tester, if you're a user who is already running a Lightning node. And there is a user-facing application on top of that, that is the Fedi itself. So all of these things are areas of contribution, and they're all under development and needs your contribution.
For sure, for sure. I think what's also important from everything they've said is to try and help you guys get a bigger picture of what it really means when we say Bitcoin development, because a lot of people just think it's strictly on the code level. But like you mentioned, even on the code level, there are differences. So there are people that are working at the really, really low level, which is the protocol level. And then there are individuals that are working higher up there, who are the guys ensuring, the APIs, the infrastructure that links that base protocol to user-facing apps. And at the top, which is where a lot of you have had experience with Bitcoin most likely, is the wallets. We have the wallets, we have all kinds of implementations that are on the user side. So moving on, I think what would be really important for us in this discussion is for us to go through some of the challenges we see in the Bitcoin development ecosystem. I think it'll be worthwhile to go through some of the things that you guys think are most important that we need to address, and some of the challenges you think we've addressed good enough, and then kind of walk through how you think we could really help the space moving forward.
Yeah. One challenge I found, I am getting started actually. I am 4 months into the journey. One challenge that I found was just taking the leap to break in. It's a community, it's a technical stack to go through, it's all the lessons you have to learn, and finding a path there. One of the ways I see this being addressed is through education programs such as yourself, at Kalil, that is. Another way this is addressed, there's a ton of education programs out there, but also in these projects themselves, people are quite inviting. The people who are already contributors there, the people who are educators in there, they're quite inviting. So this is a way of addressing the gap from, starting out, you're looking at it from, you are a user or you are someone learning and you want to break in, you want to start contributing, you want to start running these things and deploying them yourself. So that is, the challenge is, the challenge from my perspective was breaking in, and then there are all these channels for solving that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Duncan?
Thanks. Yes, I totally agree with that. And before we start talking about anything around solutions around adoption, I think that one of the major issues that we're having is we don't have enough African open source developers and developers building on Bitcoin and Lightning. And I think to solve unique solutions of our continent, that's essential. And also, some of the things that these developers came up with, like 2 of our participants in the first cohorts have now opened up a PR on BIP39 for seed words for the first Swahili seed word set for storing your seeds. And that's that just breaks down another barrier to adoption. When you're on a continent where not everyone has English, as any of their languages. So I think, to have everything come from an external sphere where not all of the unique challenges are understood is pretty essential. So we need more African Bitcoin developers.
Yes, talking about building and understanding and as well contributing into Bitcoin. Duncan referenced the fact that we need more developers. Everyone who is cognizant of the African continent, we know how intensive developers are. But then, when contributing to open source projects is extremely imperative. And if we be truthful to you, shortage of human capitals is actually affecting the Bitcoin core development community in Africa, and we feel to sort this problem, we need more developers to contribute to Bitcoin core, and by doing that, you just don't need to like contribute only through the codes. There are different sections and aspects of it, and even contributing to open source on Bitcoin these days has been something which comes with incentives. We have platforms running it. Our other challenges can also come in regards to policy makings. The governments of Africans are extremely antagonistic about the context of Bitcoin and its decentralized features, but leveraging and sorting issues on the policy side of things, getting more hands into developing and building Bitcoin infrastructures that are going to like enable seamless payment rails for Africa is extremely imperative, and I feel looking into that and bridging these challenges, we actually make the innovation itself scale across in Africa generally. Those are like the factors I'm going to reference at this point in time.
Interesting, very interesting. I mean, a lot of people have a question around, but Duncan, you've said all these things that we're facing and some of these issues and some of the things you've already done to get individuals into Bitcoin development, but at the same time, what about some of the more peripheral issues, or should I say more general issues that are faced on the continent? Things around infrastructure. Not everyone has access to the internet, not everyone has access to a laptop, not everyone has access to a smartphone. So what are the things you think we need to focus on to address these sort of issues specifically?
Yeah, you raise a very important point. I mean, just a few hours ago, I saw back in my home country, South Africa, they moved to stage 6 load shedding, which basically means that they don't have 6 gigawatts of supply that they actually need to keep everyone supplied with electricity. And that's a major problem when you're dealing with an online system, and say for Lightning needs to be, it's like a more always online system. And beyond that, I think just the penetration of like telecommunications and out in more rural areas, because Bitcoin adoption doesn't just mean cities within Africa, it means all of Africa. And I think that sort of discussing solutions around that, you see stuff like gridless and sort of these microgrids, villages that are basically starting up independent of grids and producing their own power with Bitcoin mining as a first tenant for that, make it a viable business basically. So yeah, but we can discuss many more solutions. The rest.
For sure.
I am quite hopeful looking at the space, like in terms of the general challenges we see with the infrastructure and the solutions that are coming up already to fill the gap. For example, shout out to Mashankura, bridging that last mile gap. Super excited. I do, whenever I see a Lightning node map, I'm concerned. I barely see any in Africa, but there is, free routing Africa coming up. Again, big shout out there. So generally, I think we do have infrastructure problems, but we do have, solutions that are already out there. So it's a matter of adopting these already, scaling them, while we look for room to build new technologies. Shout out again to Fedimint and Fedi, because we got to shape this for communities as well.
Awesome. You guys touched up on very, very important points. I'd just like to ask each of you guys what you think would help in terms of trying to not necessarily tackle all these issues of building out the energy infrastructure and all that, but how do we work within the existing framework we have, which isn't so great from all the issues you've enumerated, and how do we try to incentivize people to get into Bitcoin development in general? What are the pathways you see, things you would recommend, and things you think we could do moving forward?
Starting with what you said, I mean, we've addressed all the issues around the problems and challenges we tend to face, and I noticed when Duncan referenced the fact that most devs doesn't even have, shortage of electricity, internet access, and a lot of things ravaging in Africa. I mean, what we need to focus on, it's more of intensifying effort more on education and enabling cohesion. I mean, the population of Nigeria is about 200 million people. We reference the work done by Kalil into educating people getting them acquainted with Bitcoin development. When we have such initiative in numerous aspects, I mean, we have a lot of developers who are still not contributing to Bitcoin, who are not doing stuff in that regard. When they get access to platforms that onboard them into doing that, that's a part of the solution. And I mean, we can't just keep building stuff without also trying a way to incorporate into letting the elites and people who are making policies to the products and infrastructure we are building to understand what the context of Bitcoin entails as an innovation, not on the crypto level, So having understanding to demystify these processes and creating awareness and the right policy environment to enable products that gives easy access to Bitcoin innovations and applications in Africa is imperative. When we have this consistently, then, I mean, education itself will skyrocket adoption. And when there is adoption, all Bitcoin products will be used. And when all Bitcoin products are being used, you see people being free financially. And that's the goal. I mean, contributing to open source is contributing to humanity. People using Bitcoins means financial freedom. I mean, I'm always viewing from the technical perspective and the policy perspective, because you see different changes in terms of products. I mean, I was using BitNob, using a lot of other applications when, if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm correct now, February 5th, 2021, the government restricted transactions, the government of Nigeria restricted transactions between your traditional banks and making Bitcoin purchases. And we realized that applications that are profiling solutions for Bitcoin transaction in Africa were able to adjust through what Bitcoin entails, through the P2P system. And that's why addressing things around the technical part into getting people acquainted, building for Bitcoin through education, and also creating enabling environments with policymakers to understand that Bitcoin itself is decentralized and they don't have a choice rather than to understand the innovation and enable its adoption for the masses, because when we speak about Bitcoin, it's just a matter of time. Everybody will become a Bitcoiner, and it's just a matter of time. I mean, so those are my contribution towards profounding solutions to these challenges at this point in time. Abubakar, Duncan, you can go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to add to what you said, Heritage, around Bitcoin adoption. It's pretty clear that governments, I'm thinking of mostly African governments from experience, that they're not going to sort out our problems around Bitcoin adoption. I feel that a top-down approach isn't the best way either. I'm a big believer in the bottom-up approach, as you may have heard of creating these circular economies. You've got a sort of shared collective around the value of Bitcoin and what it brings within your community. Projects like Fediment and which sort of fits in with that model. We need more projects such as Bitcoin Akasi and Bitcoin Mountain, and I think from those sort of grassroots projects, figuring out their own needs is probably a lot better than relying on a government to budget for certain communities and things. So I think adoption will come from, a decentralized set of circular economies. That's sort of the way I see it going. I don't believe that governments are going to just outright, help that happen. So it's definitely up to the people, and that's why we need developers within these regions.
You want to add as well?
Oh, yeah, lots of good points. Maybe just a quick add. I am a fan of modules that can move together to achieve a function. And developers, the way sometimes they tend to operate is they get in the silos. I know we are complicit of being a bit too low-key and not showing up there. But in this conference, for example, I see a lot of communities, activists, people who are doing certain camps, educators, right? And developers also, I think, to increase adoption, particularly, while you're writing the tech, the best way to do that is to be plugged into these communities to understand their needs as well and evolve with them and move, either increase their velocity or increase your velocity to match theirs so that you can bring solution to these communities. So that's what I would add on to, all the points. But yeah.
That's a very interesting point, because not only are you guys mentioning the need for creating an enabling environment for developers to thrive, i.e. through resources, matching them with more structured ways for them to be onboarded as Bitcoin developers, you actually touch upon a very interesting point, which is most often than not, we have a lot of Bitcoin developers kind of hidden and siloed away and building for the general public. And I'm sure the crowd is thinking, you're building for the public and you're not public. So I think, walk us through, or I guess the audience, walk us through how you think we could bridge the gap between the super shadowy coders like yourselves and a couple of them in the crowd as well, and the general public who more often than not are the ones who are going to end up using the majority of the software that they're building.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question from this side, but to the developers, show up at least once. Put whatever you're building, put it out there. That's the best way to build. Quick iteration, build something, you're part of a project. And anyway, more important for me to say is, if you're thinking of getting started, I've talked to a bunch of developers here today, just get started. Like it's always talk to some people, but take the action beyond that. Get started. You probably, when you're getting started, you're more plugged in to the communities than after you've started and going on. So, when you're getting started, get started, but still maintain that, keep that connection, keep those links as you go forward. That's my thing.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to add is also about developers showing up, is, going to these communities and actually seeing that your idea of how people use technology might be completely wrong. You might actually not, if you're that shadowy supercoder, and not actually engaging with communities where you think that maybe your solution is actually right for them and actually solves the problem. But there's so much friction that you're not aware of that is introduced because of the conditions that people are living under. And then also something else to add around, I think it was also around maybe you have a question around privacy, because a lot of Bitcoin developers are more frequently working under pseudonyms. They don't want to be known publicly, that kind of thing. But the one feature that we do have is we can selectively, reveal ourselves to people. We don't need to be on social media saying like, I'm visiting this community, I'm checking out. You probably don't want to be doing that. What you actually want to do is you want to talk to the community in person. So you want to be there, reveal as much as you're willing to reveal to them about yourself, but keep as much privacy as you need. So if that's the concern, I just say like keep it off social media. Yeah.
Right.
Contributing to that, you're just going to pick up from all the speakers saying these processes can't happen in a day. when you're trying to like transition into a new stack or innovation and getting yourself into it, it has to be a procedural process. And you know, a super coder doesn't end up becoming a super coder in a day. And what you need to do is to like get the available resources. When you get the available resources and making yourself available in a technical community, more like, community that supports the kind of development and stacks you're trying to like engage, then you keep scaling, and end up becoming what you really want to achieve in the field. And the process of achieving it should be procedural. We tend to like understand that even the name Satoshi Nakamoto itself is pseudonymous, and the set of developers who contribute to what Bitcoin is today, or we know the cypherpunks, and you know the processes behind it. You can stay anonymous and still remain productive. And when you remain productive and dedicated on a gradual process, you become what you really want to achieve in terms of contributing and making impact towards humanity, which is Bitcoin.
I think you guys brought up a lot of very interesting points that I'd like to at least form a general question from that, because one thing a lot of people tend to ask developers in general is, okay, you've built the tools, they work, they're amazing, but you're in the best position possible to help them, or at least guide them to try and use these tools as best that they can, especially on the privacy point that you bring up, Duncan, especially. Not everyone exactly knows steps in which you could take to help preserve your privacy, and just in general, using Bitcoin the quote-unquote correct way. So what are the ways you think that developers could really bridge that sort of outreach between, here are the tools we've built, do whatever you want, versus here are the tools we've built, these are some of the things that we recommend you do when you're using this. You could do anything else, but these are sort of the recommended ways that you could use it. That way we could have like a more healthy ecosystem where you don't have individuals unnecessarily using Bitcoin in a way that could actually have perverse effects on their lives. So.
Thanks, that's a very good question actually. And I think it doesn't just come from the Bitcoin developers side of things. Bitcoin developers need to partner with content creators, educators, people that are actually on the ground and that actually, understand what's going on, to reach people and, share the philosophy of Bitcoin, educate on how to remain private, how to secure your funds. And then it's sort of like a feedback loop. Like you'll find out the problems from these people through the educators and content creators, and that should feed back to the developers so that you're actually getting real world, use feedback that you can iterate on. And it's not just a whole bunch of technical people figuring out what's the best user experience, because they'll be like, oh, my derivation path, I'll just save that, and so it's like. I feel like there needs to be that constant loop and working with content creators and educators. That's what I'd say would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, my perspective is the best privacy is one that works by default. If you think about this, developer, you need to think about privacy with every step of the build, just as you would think about accessibility with every step of the build and scalability and other things. So when you are building your next Bitcoin technology, whatever you're working on, think of how do you not compromise on privacy? Because if you compromise on privacy and then you want to slap that on later on, you're forcing every single user to think about this and to figure out their own ways, and they're going to do suboptimal things. They're not going to do good things. In fact, it's going to be painful for them. This is one thing I like about the Fedimint protocol itself, in that it starts off packaging strong privacy for people. And hopefully, at the end of the day, you build that, and you build that with a good user interface so that the communities who end up benefiting from this don't think about privacy. It comes as a default. On top of that, what they see is the value of using the Bitcoin on top of it. So this is my perspective on privacy.
Yeah, adding to what Okjodom has just said. Reviewing seems to be my own perspective and view about it, reviewing, and also building infrastructures that enables privacy and utility. So when we're talking about reviewing, I mean the African ecosystem leads an innovation that is going to like profile solution to their problem in real time. And as a developer, you're going to like be creating products leveraging decentralized innovation like Bitcoin into profiling solution for Africans in real time. And when we developers, we understand that the issues around Africa presently is huge in terms of payment infrastructures and cross-border remittances. When you think of building products and profiling solution, it should be in that perspective. For instance, I mean, we know how the Bitcoin ecosystem and the Bitcoin Twitter works. Review from people in terms of making transactions through USSD brings about merchant Kura. And presently, we also know that there are reviews from people into like getting safe, easy and cheap self-custody solutions for Africa. And I mean, as a developer, when you're thinking about solutions to like integrate, you definitely going to be leveraging on those reviews into building infrastructures that really affects people's life as what Bitcoin itself is in terms of enabling financial freedom. And when you're building this product, you have to like have two things at the back of your mind, just the way Bitcoin is structured. Utility and privacy on the on-chain layer, it should be extremely private and decentralized. And on the second layer, you should be more keen about utility and instant transaction in terms of payment and meeting people need. I feel when all these are being considered during development of projects and infrastructures, then scaling is something that will be extremely possible and easy for us in the ecosystem.
That's definitely a lot of interesting solutions to the problem. I think one good takeaway is for individuals, specifically the Bitcoin developers, to build with the recommendations in mind, or at least to have the recommended best cases or of using these technologies as the defaults, like you both have said. So I think what would be very, very interesting to kind of touch upon is we've heard a lot of people already building for Bitcoin, and we've seen some of these products and services, right? But one thing that some people might say or tend to say is, well, hold on a minute, like, these are basically just clones from solutions that are outside of the continent that don't necessarily translate on the continent. So how do you guys think the way forward would be in terms of trying to, instead of translating solutions from outside, how do we provide and, I guess, build for Africa by Africa?
You start by training in Africa, right? And then you build in Africa. I have had an anecdote is an African developer saying they need to tune their solution to outside the continent so that it scales fast enough, so that it succeeds. But that is quite unfortunate. I think you build here, you are embedded here, you know the problem you're building for, and that's how you go and you get the right support system, you get the right sequence so that you can get this out to who needs it. You don't need to, and in cases where you need to bring a solution, the good solutions out there, so you don't, we always say use what is useful, don't reject the solutions out there. So there's also that aspect of customizing it for your community.
Very true, very true.
Yeah, I think also, like I mentioned before around external solutions, we're not ignoring best practices or, like innovative things that, like the Lightning Network and Bitcoin itself and, best practices for that. It's more around when we use these tools to build solutions within the continents, are they actually appropriate for where we are at this stage, in terms of development? And, Africa sometimes sees or always sees this kind of leapfrogging effect of, well, I can just say in South Africa as well around like this sort of cashless society and e-wallets and, you know, so I feel like that sometimes I don't want to say market, but the society is just at a different level of development in terms of that we're not going to follow a normal glide slope through all of these technologies or something like that. And then also around the part of developers is that I think that's just an exponentially compounding effect. You know, training developers who can sort of proliferate throughout the continent, train other developers. And that's starting, you know, that's what we're seeing. And just within the Collar program, as we were nearing sort of the later stages of the Collar program, just seeing that interaction amongst the developers and, you know, when they were actually building projects and coming up with solutions and some things that I would have never even, like, thought about and, you know, that I just thought was completely unique. And yeah, I think that's super important. But then for them to be out there, you know, don't move away, like stay, like make sure that you make an impact on the continent. And, you know, you're not just going down the hole of, you know, being within your only technical realm, you know, overseas or something like that. I think we need to, you know, really put in the effort here and give back.
For sure. I think
I'm actually going to add to that, saying it means we should actually focus on customer-centric solutions, you know, customer-centric solution in the sense that you're going to see the perspective Africans have about Bitcoin, and this particular innovation is different from what it is in the West. There was a time when you're just going to be walking on the street of Lagos or probably moving here in Accra, and you notice most people use Momo, right? And you tend to use, like, so far you can use this mobile money payment system, then you should be able to use Bitcoin because it's seamless payment system as well. So having interfaces that looks like what people resonate with initially, and transitioning into a decentralized innovation that makes them their own bank with the same user interface who scale things. And I mean, if a woman on street selling probably corn can use Momo, the same woman can use Bitcoin through a seamless interface. So customer-centric solutions are of extreme importance when you want to, like, build for African by Africans. And I mean, you need to be present in Africa to witness the solution and view of people in order for you to, like, have the real mindset and concept of building solution for this particular jurisdiction.
Very, very solid points. Very, very solid points. I think to wrap up kind of from all the points you guys have made, it seems what you're all essentially saying is we shouldn't really focus on development from the point of view of making Africans fit within Bitcoin. Instead, we should focus on ensuring that Bitcoin works for Africa, essentially, utility-based. Exactly. So I guess just to round up, I know we've spoken in depth about some of the issues we already see in the development space, and I'm sure people are like, well, you know, with all these problems, why even bother? So just to kind of lighten up the mood, I'd ask you guys just briefly to quickly go over some of the exciting things you're seeing solution-wise, which you think are really positive developments in the space.
Fediment and Fedi.
Actually, back home, I'd say Bitcoin Ekasi and Machankura, and, you know, basically seeing the circular economy evolving. That's very exciting.
Yes, I mean, I'm from Nigeria, and I'm cognizant of innovations and products working perfectly in Nigeria. I would like to reference the likes of BitNob in terms of transaction processes. I would also like to reference the likes of DGOT in terms of education and getting people acquainted with different Bitcoin products. And in terms of huge transaction, OTC, and other payment rates, I mean, I've used a platform like Paxful into like getting transactions across. So collectively, I feel when we have more products like this and when we have more education platforms to onboard people into these products, we keep scaling as an ecosystem.
Amazing, amazing. I think just to wrap up, I hope everyone at least has gone home with some more insight into not only how the Bitcoin development ecosystem really works, but some of the challenges we're facing. And hopefully you've learned how we could potentially move forward together, both the developers as well as the users. So a round of applause to all the guys. I really hope you guys had an amazing time.